Hello and welcome back to All for United, and more specifically, welcome back to Jesus Christ, welcome back to Timeline Talk, the show where we talk about everything from the past week on Twitter, all in one place. So I think this episode is going to be sort of more revolving around youth. There's been a lot of loan deals confirmed for young players, and we're going to be discussing a lot of that. I've got a massive actually, a panel built for you. So feel free to check these guys out, and I'll see you after the intro.
Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from Passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Right, got rid of that hairball or whatever it was in the back of my throat. I'll introduce you to my panel. As I said, it's a lot bigger than we usually have for this show. So massive thank you for you boys for joining me. As ever, check them out on Twitter. They put their ats in the little handle. But yeah, we're talking about youth, United's youth, obviously. A lot of loan deals sort of pretty much confirmed over the last couple of days. Obviously, we've had Chong already go to Birmingham, Pellistri to Alaves, and then I think Garner and Brandon Williams are basically out the door now. So, Mark, I'll come to you first. I want to talk about the loan system that United have got at the minute, because previously it's been very underwhelming. But now we're seeing players like James Garner. He went to Forest. He's come back revitalised. Are you happy with this sort of shift that we've had in terms of utilising the loan system? As much as I hate to say it, a bit like Chelsea do.
Yeah, I was going to say, as long as we've not got the Chelsea loan system, I think you're in a good place. But no, it's certainly got better over the years, hasn't it? Especially in the last year. And I think this again is a testament to Ollie. Really, he seems to, I think he said today, Diallo could possibly go out on loan as well, but only if the right club come along. The club isn't trying to move players on for experience at the wrong clubs. They need to really sort of have a good look at it, whether they're actually going to be played, whether they're the right person for the club and going to get that sort of needed experience. So yeah, it's good. To be honest with you, I mean, I know we had a few years of a very sort of scattergun approach towards loans, but it's never been that bad. And obviously we're always incredibly proud of our academy, system and the reason why we get so many decent players and the record of having someone from the academy for many years is because of that system that we have. So yes, it's been a bit poor over the last few years, but certainly getting better. And again, I have to take my hat off to Ollie for that.
Yeah, exactly. I'll come to you then, Henry. Obviously, Mark said they mentioned finding the right clubs for these players. Now, an example, he obviously used him before, James Garner, spent the first half of last season on loan to Watford. It wasn't quite working. So obviously Ollie pulled him back, sent him out to Forest. It's worked very well. Obviously, he's now going to go back again. How important to you is it that we not just find these players clubs, but find them the right clubs?
Well, I think it comes down to style of play and system, and again the Ahmad one is a key one for me, where you can tell they've got a club in mind or various clubs in mind in terms of style of play. If you can't have a side that are constantly sat back and not retaining the ball or not willing to go at teams and be direct, and not have players that are willing to run at defenders. So they're picking the right clubs for these players, and I think that's a key point. But also, and I think people need forget this in terms of revenue that we can generate from loan players that come back, and then the clubs want them on a permanent deal. And I'm not saying some players will come back and go in the first team, but the vast majority will probably leave the club, and that's another way of generating a lot of money. Chelsea have done it over the last few years. They generate a lot of money. You look at this year, I think Matt Miazga's probably played like 1 or 2 games for the first team, and they're looking at getting like 15 million euros out of a player. Now, I know that may not seem a lot in the grand scheme of things, but if you tally up 3 or 4 players for that, you can get another, top class player with that money. So I think it will be more handy over the years, considering our owners, and they're not going to leave, but they don't put their own money into the club. But if we can generate money from, loans with options to buy or loan deals, and then the clubs come back in for the players, I think that, you've got a system where you can, like we're not able to do right now, but maybe in a few years' time, able to get rid of players that are not quite good enough, but will generate a fair amount of money.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. Still, I'll ask you sort of a similar sort of question. Obviously, a little birdie told me you actually play football or have played football at least.
I don't know where that came from. I have no idea.
But how important is this loan market? Obviously, United are a club who like to promote from within, but not every player can do what Marcus Rashford did, what Mason Greenwood did. So, how important is it that we start making the most of this loan market?
Yeah, well, the clubs that we send these players to is the real key to it. There's a couple of points with regard to these clubs. A, are they the loanees actually going to play? And B, what type of football are they going to play? And will it suit our style when these players come back to us? So, likes of Ghana, for example, I think now needs a Premier League loan rather than going back to Forest or going to the Championship. He needs to step up now to the Premier League. My clubs that I would choose for the Premier League loans would be Southampton, Brighton, because they've got two they've got two quality managers for a start. Brian Potter, Graham Potter in particular is outstanding. He's an outstanding coach, an outstanding developer of talent. But what he does need to do, he needs bigger and better players around. He just doesn't have that. He just doesn't have the funding. Brighton don't have the money to be able to do that. So taking loan players is ideal. And Ghana would fit actually Brighton particularly well. He'd really fit into their system alongside Basuma very, very well. And Southampton, because they operate high press, I think Ahmad would be superb for them. They operate high press. They play a 4-4-2. Ahmad's a natural wide player. He would fit their style quite well. So in answer to your question, it is all about club placement. It is about experience, but it's all about club placement and making sure that the managers utilise our players as, to the best of their ability. And I think that's the key element. And if it doesn't work, if you're going to go and sit on the bench for 6 months, you may as well sit on the bench at Man United, because you're not going to learn anything being away from the club if you're not playing football. So you've got to pick the right club. You've got to pick the right manager. You've got to pick the right style of play, and you've got to pick the right teammates around, because you want these. All of these elements are key in picking a club for loan. For loan players.
Yeah.
Now you guys stop giggling at my fucking faux pas.
I'm just giggling at the Brian Potter comment. I think.
I know my faux pas. Yeah. Sorry, lads. I meant Graham Potter, obviously, but anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
Anyway, Charlie, I'll come to you. We're talking about youngsters. I'm fairly sure you're the youngest here, so I think you're the best person to talk to. Just obviously try and stay away from the obvious, but give us a wider context as to why these loans are so important. Obviously, the players get experience, that's much needed, but what else is there to gain from going away to a team like this?
I think a little bit of obviously experience is the main thing, and I think also with players like Ahmad as well, I think a bit of can he get into a bit of a can he have some? It doesn't sound good when I say this, but he needs to get some bad challenges. He needs to get used to the physicality of what's going on. And I think in the Premier League, obviously the Championship, I think
just send him to Stu's house.
I've been nailed on that fucking out of context AFU again. Who fucking is running that account?
We honestly don't know, actually.
It's so Karthik. I don't care what he says.
Yeah, I just checked Twitter and I've been nailed again. Fucking hell, Callum, come on more. When you're having a pop at the comments, come on more. You can get on the AFU and out of context. Sorry, lads, carry on. Sorry, Charlie, carry on. I was fuming.
What I'll say about Ahmad, I think he needs physical development in terms of he's a very, very good prospect. I think he's a very clever player. I think we've seen that already. But I think he needs to get used to the physicality of the Premier League. You've got James Garner. I agree with Stu. I think he's fantastic. Southampton and Brighton, I agree with that. I think those would be two really good options particularly Brighton, I think. But in terms of sort of, we could talk about sort of youngsters, or I agree with what Henry said about, what Chelsea do. I mean, they've sent Guehi on loan to Swansea, 21 years old, and he's sold for 20 million to Crystal Palace. I don't think it's a good signing personally. 20 million for a 21-year-old who's never played in the Premier League before consistently. I think Palace have gone wrong there. That's just my opinion. He might be a world beater, but I just don't know how Chelsea do it. I think they're getting 34 million for Tammy Abraham. It's incredible, really, what they're doing. But yeah, I quite like the Chelsea system. I know it might be unpopular, but I quite like their system of sending players out on loan. Send 10 out on loan. 2 of them might be good enough, 8 might not. You might get 80 million for the 8 that aren't good enough. And then as Henry said, you can fund a Romelu Lukaku, as Chelsea have done. So yeah, I think Garner is definitely one to keep an eye on. I think Ahmad as well. I would rather Ahmad stayed, though. I think Ahmad, for me, gets in ahead of Dan James in terms of technical ability, but obviously Dan James has got more experience and more awareness, perhaps on the pitch. But yeah, obviously experience with these youngsters. But for me, at the moment, none of these youngsters that have been in the under-23s are really ready, and I don't think that they will get in the team anyway, because I think our squad is improving a lot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So maybe if players don't make the first team, just add a few zeros onto that valuation. But I'll come to you, Callum, to prevent you having a fight with anyone in the comments. Keep you talking for a little bit. Of the players that have gone out, obviously there's not been that many, but who are you sort of most optimistic for in the future? We've obviously got Chong, Tuanzebe, who I forgot to mention actually, James Garner, Brandon Williams, and Pellistri so far. Obviously, we don't count Pereira.
Yeah, because he's shite. To be fair, I think Jimmy Garner's been one that I've always looked at for a few years now, and I think Stu's right. I think the Premier League has got to be his next loan. Although I agree with him to an extent about the experience and everything else, United are kind of, obviously we're a big fish in a big pond, and I sort of think a lot of other teams' playing style is going to be quite different to ours. We're going to be a team that does tend to hold on to the ball a lot, and go into a lot of these other teams like your Southamptons and Leeds, Brighton, etc. They're not going to be like that. So these players that are going to go out on loan are going to have to get used to kind of playing in different styles, but they're just going to have to get used to that kind of different. And I know Stu probably, we're not saying you weren't saying that, but I think there's definitely going to be a difference regardless of wherever these players go, whether it be the Championship or the Premier League. And the thing is, I think in terms of the loan system and the young players coming through, Chelsea have kind of got it, Bob, on the past few years. I know you've mentioned it's unpopular, but I don't know if it's unpopular. I kind of think it's jealousy. They've had this kind of footballing structure in place for so many years now, and they've had negotiators behind the scenes and the right football people to be able to get these kind of fees. When you're loaning players out across the leagues and they're getting this experience, they're showing that they can play with the top guys. So, sorry, I got distracted with a comment then. But they're showing that they can play this senior football regardless of what league it is. So it does have a little bit of transfer fee to them. And United have struggled with that for years. And because we've not had that footballing structure in place, we've been giving average players high wages, and then it makes it difficult to shift them on, whereas Chelsea haven't done that. I mean, they probably have to an extent, but nowhere near to the extent that United have. And I think it's transitioning at the point now where Ollie's trying to get rid of that. But look, Pereira's has to go to Brazil. He's definitely a player that could easily play in Europe somewhere, but nobody wants him because he's on whatever his wages are. And it's the same, like, I know we always come back to him, but Phil Jones is the same. Phil Jones is not a bad player. I know we banter about it, and I know we say he's rubbish, but he's not at all. He went to the last World Cup. But because he's on £120,000 a week, why should he leave Man United? I'd happily sit on the bench for 120 grand a week. I'd stay behind after every game and get shouted and called a knobhead after every game if it meant I was earning that amount of money. So,
I a knobhead without getting paid that
much. And I get called a knobhead and a lot worse for absolutely nowhere near that amount of money. Yeah. So, I don't blame Jones for staying. So the thing is, because of the wrong footballing decisions over the past few years, we've not been able to loan these players out and sell these players on. And unfortunately, hopefully now we're coming to the end of it. Hopefully Pereira will leave next year. hopefully Jones will get some minutes under his belt and start keeping himself fit, and we'll sell him on probably January or next season. So I think we've just got to bide our time with some of these squad players, which I think it kind of stops us from signing that fourth player. Because if we'd have got rid of him, there's no doubt we'd have had that central defensive midfielder, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Andrew, just to round us off then, obviously we've spoken about how our loan sort of protocol has improved over the last couple of years. Is there anything you can think that would improve it even further, do you think?
I just think it's just finding the right clubs for those players that are going out on loan. We want them to progress in their development, and finding clubs that have the right style of play to bring the players on. Just an example for James Garner. I mean, like last season, he went out on loan to Watford. It didn't work out. The club recognised that and went, well, we'll find you another club that's going to bring on your development. And Forest certainly brought along his development because he had the good second half to last season. And I think it has been confirmed he's going back to Forest. I don't know whether it's for the whole season or not. I know Ollie mentioned in his press conference, well, for the next 6 months at least, we want to see James Garner progress even more. So even though he's had strong performances, it's just we can't guarantee him the first team at the moment getting those minutes. But if he does shine this season, he's making himself like indispensable and pushing Ollie to put him towards the first team as well, and also reducing Matic's phasing Matic out. Still keep Matic, but over the longer term, he's gonna move on. So is James Garner the one to take over him because he can play that slightly defensive role as well, sit in the midfield and do what Matic does. So, and also for the likes of Twanzebe, I think it's going to be a big season for him at the Villa as well. I just think he's going to, with Ian Jones being like, was it the 5th or 6th choice now? He's going to have a good season, come back, and then United are going to have to decide with him whether he's worthy of staying or they need to move him on so he can go on and make a career for himself elsewhere. So I say it's one thing we are proud of producing good youth players that either come through to the first team or go on to have careers elsewhere. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't help but agree. Well, just before we move on to the next thing, I'll sort of open this up to the board so anyone can jump in here. It's a really good comment, obviously, talking about getting a feeder club. Now, it's something that Chelsea do, something that Man City do as well. It seems to work in a sense. Does anyone think that could be something that could be implemented here?
I'll go. We've already had it. We've had it for years for feeder clubs over in Holland, over in Belgium, and we've sent players out there. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. The idea of a proper feeder club is for the Premier League to pull their arse into gear and get a Premier League B league. I'm not talking about under 23s. I'm talking about a B league where you can play a second team. When you look at most squads, most teams, they've got enough to put a squad into another league. And I think that's the only way that players like the likes of Phil Jones can get his value back up. The likes of Pereira can get any type of value is by playing them regular. Look, if I was Phil Jones, and Callum's got a great point, by the way, I would stay for 120 grand a week and I'd sit on my arse. I know Chelsea had a player years ago. He was on 40 grand a week. He didn't turn out. He was I can't remember his name now for whatever. It's completely kind of Dutch international. Bodegaard, I think it was, Winston Bogarde, someone like that. Sat on his arse on 40 grand a week for 5 years. Never played a first team game. Don't care. But if I was Phil Jones, I'd be knocking on Stevie Bruce's door and trying to get myself up to Newcastle. Is it fit perfectly in the Newcastle team? This is the type. This comes down to whether as a player you're happy to take the money, which fair enough, you signed a contract, go ahead and do it. We might not like it, but you can't, it is what it is. Or you want to play football, you want to kind of resurrect your career. And so try and find a club that suits you. And I like Jones. Pereira, we shouldn't be loaning out. We should have fucked him off years ago. But as Carl said, he's on too much money. Way too much money. Yeah, and he's shot. He's on way too much money. And so the only way you can really get around this is to have a B league of some description. I'm not talking about the under 23s. I'm talking about a B league where players can get their values back up. And clubs are desperate for this. They need this. This is the next stage in football in the UK is to do that because, as I say, if you check any squad in the Premier League, they've got enough to run two teams quite comfortably. So
that was a really bad move by the FA, wasn't it? Because it was only up until a few seasons ago when they did have the reserves, and that seemed to really bode well for all clubs. You know,
well, they swapped it, didn't they, with the under-23s? It was trying to be this new Premier League 2 thing, wasn't it? And it's. I don't think it's nowhere near the same as what it was, really, was it?
And Stu, I'm going to be honest with you, buddy. I'm not sure I agree with you about the feeder club thing. I think that we haven't had a feeder club for a few years. There were talks recently about having Malmo and Antwerp again, actually. But I feel that our best years of loan deals, whilst Ferguson was in charge, was when we had feeder clubs. So I'm not quite. I think there is a correlation there to some extent. I get your points about it from the negative perspective, but I do think that it could be a good thing to have.
It's a good idea, but you'd need a stronger league though. The Belgian league is not strong enough.
City with Troy, they've got a majority ownership in Troy, who are now in Ligue 1. So we're looking at the problem is we're competing with City, who have got, I think they've got like 7 feeder clubs. They've got 7 clubs that are majority owned by the City Group. So you've got Melbourne over in Australia. You've got Troy. You've got one. Is it Girona or something in Spain?
We've got a feeder club in Australia now, haven't we? Sydney. Well, we've feeder club with Sydney or somewhere in Australia.
They've got the City. This is what I mean. Sorry to butt in, but like you say, Henry, to compare to City and to compare to Chelsea, it's redundant, really, because they've got owners that are billionaires that have invested so much. I mean, City Football Group, whatever they're called, they own 10 teams across the world. It's as we can get into the ethics of it all, but as a football team, they clearly work around very well. And in the background, when they've got that many teams that they can feed across the world, send the players to feed across the world and all that, they seem to run it so well that Melbourne City, New York City, there's all these big league teams who they can just go over. Girona is it Spain or France? Can't remember now. Yeah. But there's so many places that these players can go just to get experience because there's already that agreement in place. So I mean, as good as it could be for United, I feel like it's a bit of a thing of the past that United don't want to do anymore. But maybe it could be something that could be worked on in the future. Because if we still struggle to get rid of these players, especially on loan, then it might have to be something the club consider.
One quick thing, I think we need to start, and this is what Chelsea have done really smartly, and Man City as well, including buyback clauses in some of the players' contracts when we sell them. So I'm not saying a buyback clause in Pereira's contract because, Callum, you are right, he is shit. But I think with some of the other players, if you're going to sell them and make the assumption that they're not good enough and then they go and perform in another league, we need to start being a bit more business savvy. Chelsea have now got an 80 million euro buyback clause in Tammy Abraham's contract. They probably won't use it, but imagine if he went and scored 35 goals in Serie A and then they're like, oh, we did make a little bit of a mistake here. We'll just go and buy him back. I think we've got to be a little bit smarter with how we do business, with giving players the right thing. Yeah, you're right. It's not planning for tomorrow, not planning for 6 months or a year. It's planning for the next 4 or 5 years. When you can look at a player and think, we've got we've got an option to buy him back for or first refusal or something like that. And
well, it's like you say. Obviously, Lukaku's 28, so he's only got 3-4 years maybe as a top level striker.
Too far behind, yeah. We're too far behind.
And Abraham's 22, something like that. So give him 4 years in Roma, he might be amazing there. Then they could bring him back. It's just future planning and wondering what could happen and making sure that 5 years time the club are in good shape.
But I think feeder clubs are critical. Sorry,
I will add about that sort of buyback and planning for the future. We have done that, to be fair to the club, like with Memphis Depay and Adnan Januzaj as well. We had either first refusal or a buyback clause, so it's something the club have explored. I think we're just not getting rid of players that could possibly be good in the future. Like, when was the last sort of high-profile youngster that left United, other than maybe Angel Gomez? But he went on a free transfer, so you can't. He was out of contract, so you can't really add anything into his move. But I think
it just comes down to business, doesn't it? It comes down to that we need to start generating revenue, and then you can start spending more money, because we all know the Glazers are not going to go out of pocket with this club. They won't. They won't go and put the money in the hand in their pockets and get out 20, 30 million. They just won't do it.
But Henry, you've answered your own question there, buddy. You really reckon that if we made some more money, that the Glazers are going to free up that cash for anyone else? Probably not.
Well,
I understand what you're saying, and I do agree that in United's interest, that's exactly what we should do, wholeheartedly. However, we go back to the original point of what we always moan about every year: is are they going to use it? I don't think they will.
Yeah, I think you're right in the sense that they are greedy, which is fair enough. But I think this year we've seen a little bit of a shift. And I think they've realised, and this is one thing that hasn't happened before, because they've had the first contact with the fans. They're now, as Stu mentioned before the podcast, they're now doing the plaques. They've rushed it into, making sure that that's done quickly to appease fans and to make it they've spent 20 million on the stadium, which we never thought they'd do. I think they now realise the power of the fan base if they don't get things right in this club. That's why the Varane deal for 34 million.
Disagree. Sorry, Henry. I slightly disagree. That £20 million for the Old Trafford was already happening. I mean, I was listening to TalkSport the other day with Jim White and that knobhead Simon Jordan. They're trying to say that the Glazers have turned a corner and finally Man United fans should be happier with the Glazers and all this shit. And it's like, well, we shouldn't be, because that was already happening, that £20 million renovation. And all of a sudden, it's this thing on the media that they just want to get a reaction from United fans. Yes, it's great, it happened. But the thing is, it wasn't really a renovation. It was a slight... The outside of the stadium stuff falling apart. They just put a lick of paint on the outside. I don't know how much that paint cost, but Christ, I'm going to start doing that if that's how much they're paying for.
15 years ago. Yeah, we shouldn't be having this discussion. It should have happened 15 years ago.
You guys know how much I dislike the Glazers. I've said it so many times before. I'm not advocating for them.
No, yeah, I'm not saying you obviously do.
I hate them. I absolutely hate them, and I'd trade them for pretty much any owner. They would rather see us go bankrupt than see themselves in a bit of trouble. So, but I think in terms of the power shift a little bit and a little bit of smart business, and I'm not going to credit them and say they're fantastic, but getting a world-class centre-half for 34 million, getting Sancho waiting a year, we wouldn't have done that a few years ago. We would have just panicked and bought a Gabriel Obertan or some crap like that, which we've done before. But I think that the shift is pressure, a lot of pressure from the fan base, because if they don't get things right, sponsors start pulling. Now, look, TeamViewer, I bet TeamViewer are on the phone to them going, what the hell are you doing? Like a few months ago. They're going, sort this shit mess out and make the fans a little bit happier.
Can I just say that the fan unrest and frustration hasn't changed. We have probably been a bit more vocal in the last year, but the biggest common denominator in this is Ollie. I don't mean to keep blowing his trumpet, but seriously, these are things that he's instilled, and more. I want to see it keep happening.
Absolutely. But the better connection you have with the team, the more you're going to advocate for them and be angry that they're not getting the rub of the green. So, but I just think that we've, I think they know that we're there now, which they didn't care because, again, they've had their first contact in 15 years with the fans. And that didn't come because they chose to do it like a year ago and planned it. That came because they were forced into doing it. So I think the more pressure you put on people like this, the more they've got to retaliate and react. And they've got one of two ways. They watch themselves get booted out of the club, or they invest and try and change things, behind the scenes. And the club has got to make a shift in terms of being more business savvy in the next few years.
Isn't it just very quickly, isn't it funny how something so catastrophic that nearly happened at the beginning of the year that everyone was opposed to, that they thought they were going to get money from, is actually is they've landed on, it slipped them up, and now we're seeing the more positive.
It needed to happen, didn't it?
Crazy.
It needed to happen, didn't it? It needed to happen, something like that, something. Project Big Picture, something like that. Last year, it needed to happen to wake football up again, I think. And, they've been punched really hard in the face, having come back for it. They've been smacked in the face by a freshly baked apple pie when they realised that this wasn't going to go through. And
That is a saying I've never heard before.
Well,
you get doing a podcast with Emery for a year, you learn pretty quick that he just comes out with some proper random shit sometimes.
Oh, the podcast you've still not asked us on. Yeah, I remember.
We've not even got it back yet fully. But
abuse
listen,
us.
before Callum kills me, I've got to bring this in very quickly because it is on the thumbnail, and I thought we'd have more time to talk about it. But you know, we do have a lot of talent that's probably not going to go out on loan, namely Hannibal, Elanga, and Shortieri. Now, I'll open this up to everyone. We can start a little discussion on it. Who out of those three is most likely to break into the first team this season? If anyone is going to have like a Greenwood, Rashford type season, go ahead, Mark.
I think, as Stu likes to use the term, it would be a disservice to all three of them. I think they're all very exciting players, and what a wonderful, wonderful problem to have. I think that each three of them, you know, we've got injuries to Rashford at the moment. Hannibal has been an exciting project, 9 million from Monaco, and you know, he's only been here just over a year. And we've been talking about him since day one. So that's a really good position to be in. And Shortieri, Elanga, you know, they had Elanga had a wonderful pre-season. Shortieri looked really exciting on a couple of occasions. So I hope they all get in. Honestly, I hope they all get in. You've got to remember, probably only 5% of players that come through the youth system really are given a reasonable shot, give or take. Okay. And I think that all four of them, and again, testament to Ollie, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but he's really sort of invested into the youth, and fair play. That's exactly what Ferguson did, exactly what Busby did, and Ollie's following that same suit, and it works. So all four of them, I hope they absolutely kill it, and I hope they all take their opportunities this season. They'll get it.
Yeah. Anyone got anything to add? If
I'll
you
go.
did, then I'll go again. Go on. Go on, Stu. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say I like all three of them. They're all exciting players, all exciting talents. I think Mejbri, so to say. I'm having trouble with names tonight for some reason. I haven't even touched the fucking beer either. Anyway, Hannibal. If he gets his chance, depending on the types of teams he play, I think he's got real potential. Real potential. He just reminds me at the minute of Jack Grealish because he goes down a bit too easy. But apart from that, I think what a talent. What a talent. As for striking options, you all know on this panel, Elanga's my type of forward. He's big, he's strong, he's powerful. And I think he'll get us an array of different types of goals. And that's what we need. And that just at this point in time is Greenwood's Achilles heel. He won't get us those messy types of goals, those heady types of goals. But Elanga looks really good. Shortieri, he looks brilliant in the under-23s, or looked great in the under-23s. I think he physically fits that league better than he would do. In the Premier League at the minute. Me and Cal have had this conversation before about size, and stuff of that nature. But I think once he does beef up just a little bit, I think he'll fit the Premiership well. But out the three of them, I think Hannibal's got real potential. But I love Elanga, absolutely love Elanga.
Yeah, I agree, Stu. For me, I think you've got to look at the way our sort of team and squad is set up at the moment. I think Hannibal obviously normally plays in the number 10 position. I don't think he's going to get a lot of minutes ahead of Bruno, even Juan Mata in cup matches. If Lingard was to stay as well, you've got Van der Beek that can play there as well. Whereas I think you look at Rashford, who's injured. You've got Cavani, who we know is only going to play 60% of matches. We've got Greenwood. Can he play the number 9 for 38, for a whole season? We've got Martial coming back from an injury. I think Shortieri and Elanga have got more of a chance. And I think I agree with Stu. I think Elanga is more ready. I think we saw the 2 goals he scored. Firstly, the one against Wolves was a real striker's instinct. And the one against Brentford, that finish as well. I really like Elanga, I have to say. He's quick. He's very clever. He often keeps the game quite simple, which I like. But yeah, Elanga for me is the one that's most likely to break through. But I've always said you want 2 players per position. You want about 25 first team players, and then you want a couple of youngsters coming through. And I think those couple of youngsters will probably be sort of Elanga and whether it be Shuatiri or Mejbri. But for me, Hannibal needs to mature a little bit. He's got a hot temper, and he needs to be careful. It reminds me a little bit of Dele Alli at times. I don't know whether you remember Dele Alli a couple of years ago. He really struggled with his temper during games, and he's improved on that. And I think Mejbri during the under-23s, I've seen a lot of games where he's lost his head. And he just needs to, Jack Grealish, no matter how many times he goes down, he often he gets up and he just gets on with it. He says he's a compliment to be fouled. And I think Mejbri just needs to mature a little bit more. I think he's got a bad temper at times, which is not a bad thing. You want to be a fiery player. You need to want to win. But I think he oversteps that mark, which will come with age, hopefully. But yeah, Elanga definitely for me. I agree with Stu.
I think you've got to, with players like this, you've got to have the kind of Greenwood treatment on them. You look at how much he's bulked up over the last year, and he looks fit for purpose in the Premier League now, which he didn't necessarily look like that a couple of years ago when he broke through. So I think that the key thing with these players is the type of player that Hannibal is. He's going to have pretty hefty challenges. He's going to have, if he's going to be taking on people, he needs to have, tough mental strength as well, because he's going to get kicked to shit by players because they'll pick on him. They'll look at him and go, "You want to nutmeg me? I'll whack you into Rose Head." So I think you've got to be careful with players like this, because if you bring, especially midfield players that maybe play a little bit deeper, if you and kind of take the ball on a half turn, if you bring them in too early, you can end their career before it's really even started. You look at over the years, midfield is a winger. You can sort of get away with it because he's got a lot of pace, but as a midfielder, you don't get away with it so much because you'll come up against, someone, James MacArthur or something, who's a bit crap, a bit slow, and he'll just turn around and volley you up in the air. So I think, you've got to be super careful. Elanga is, people are talking about a loan. We've got Lingard still. I think we should.
Don't loan Elanga.
Get Lingard out and put Elanga in the side. Honestly, I completely forgot about him. I'm not going to lie. Over the last week or so, because have all this talk about, we've got Rashford coming back. Now we've got Lingard. We've got Fernandes and we've got Pogba, who's played out wide, and we've got all of these players. But if the problem is you keep loaning players like that out, they won't be a Rashford or a Greenwood and break into the side a bit later on. They won't be able to because we have too many players. So if he's going to come into the side, I think it's got to be this year. I think so.
I was going to say, just on Elanga, I just think he was the big winner out of pre-season. He definitely answered the question whether he can contribute at the first team level. He can play up front. He's on the left as well. He could end up being the replacement for Martial, but whether we're ready to move on from Martial just yet, Elanga could find more success just being deputising for Rashford on the left. So,
do you like him on the left, Andrew?
I say he looked good. He looked good on the left. QPR. I'm trying to remember whether he was on the left or the right. He seemed to be like all over the pitch, but he was
on the left, I think. But
he was just getting all over the pitch, and he was just a threat on the attack as well. And also, if he was on the left as well, it just allow Ollie to be a bit less dependent on Marcus Rashford, because last season Marcus Rashford was just, we all knew he wasn't playing at 100%, and it could have gave him a rest in some of those games as well. So, and also, I think the biggest concern for Elanga is not necessarily whether he can cut it; it's just whether he'll get the opportunities he deserves. It's a crucial year for his development, and I think he does need a bit more than under 23s football. He does. Yeah. With our attacking group at the moment, it's very crowded at the moment, but I think he'll get his chance to show. Hopefully,
he'll get in the Carabao Cup, won't he? I think.
Yeah.
I think he's a shoe-in for the Carabao Cup.
Yeah, definitely. This happened for Rashford. We hadn't really heard about Rashford. I hadn't at the time when Martial got injured, and then all of a sudden burst onto the scene. Sometimes it is about that fortune, isn't it? And with Rashford being out now, role reversal, Elanga could really take those opportunities. And I think you're right. I think the Carabao Cup will certainly start some games.
was going to say on Alanga as well. He has the momentum, confidence, and also the ability. So he should flourish this season, whatever path, whether it's just in the cup games or not.
I like him as a 9. I do, Andrew. That's why I asked, whether you liked him, on the left. I like him as a 9, but he has got that ability to play right across the front three.
And he did that the number 9 role against Brentford, because I remember just scoring that brilliant goal. Wan-Bissaka crossing it in. He was just literally
that's right.
And for a difficult position to score that from, so he can. It's good to have that.
He'll be in the Swedish national team soon. I think with a lack of attacking players they've got, I think they'll bring him through really quickly, and that could be a massive benefit for us. Swedish national team.
National football, definitely.
Yeah.
And soon.
I was going to say on Hannibal, they fast-tracked him into the Tunisia first team as well. Alanga's heading probably that way as well.
They did a massive celebration, ceremony for him, didn't they? It was like the Grealish unveiling, but probably more fans.
Yeah, isn't the when's the next African Nations? Isn't it January or something stupid like that?
I thought they've moved it to the summer. Oh. They did move it to a couple of summers, and then
I think it's back to January again soon, isn't it? But you're right about Mejbri. It's interesting. They are, all three of them are a great talent. I think the one who's going to struggle the most is Shurateri. I think he'll get the less game time. I could be wrong, but that's just my thoughts.
The thing is with these players is they've got to remember they're still young, and the thing is with them as well is chances do come along for United, for young players, especially at United. It has done for years, obviously, for God knows how long. But it's all about taking these opportunities, like Rashford did when, I think if Rashford would have got injured, they were about to call Stu to play up front, I think.
Don't you worry.
The thing is, they're not just going to get handed an opportunity. They've got to work for it. When the chance comes, they've then got to show that they deserve it. They've got to show that they then deserve to stay in the team. It's all about the development and handling it right with these young lads. They're all three brilliant talents. I think you're probably right, Stu. Shurateri might struggle the most. I don't think that's due to talent or hard work or anything. I think that is simply because of his age. And at the minute, he's probably not ready for senior football because of how strong he is and his age. But again, we're saying about Greenwood bulking up. It's because he's grown into a man. Shurateri is still 17. We've had this argument before.
He's a youngster,
He's still very young. We can't expect him to look like a bodybuilder at 17 years old. We've got to give these guys time to, fit into the Premier League and fit into a senior side. And that'll come with whether it's a loan, whether it's training, whether it's the bulking or whatever it is. But we've got to give these guys time, haven't we, really? And it will come.
Can Alanga play DM? We've got so many attacking players, so many wingers, and so many strikers coming through, and then we've got one defensive midfielder, and it's come on, please, just do something. Please get one from somewhere. I don't know. Develop one from somewhere.
Yeah, Henry, I've always had this school of thought with any footballer, and if you're a defensive-minded player, and you see your role as a centre half or a right back or whatever. You should be looking at how you can develop your game all the time, 24 hours a day. How can I develop my game? And you should be looking to spot opportunities within the first 11 and start looking at ways where you can develop your game to help mould yourself into the team and make yourself almost indispensable. And players don't do that today, unfortunately.
Well, Rice was a centre-back. Declan Rice was a centre-back at youth level quite a lot.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's now not world class, but he's certainly a top level defensive midfielder. So
it could well be that he looked at his path through to the first team. I'm not saying this is true, but it could well be that he looked at his path through to the first team. At that particular time, realised he might not be able to make it a centre half due to him being so far down the pecking order, and reinvents himself. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
What a dumb comment.
What I'm saying is there should be enough in our team. Tuanzebe is one for me that could really look at re-identifying himself as a right back. I really
rate Tuanzebe. I really rate him, and I'm really gutted for him that the past couple of years just hasn't gone for him, because
I love him.
He was the guy. I thought he was brilliant, and I'm hoping his time hasn't gone. But maybe, who knows, with a good loan this year, with with the next few years of Varane and things, maybe he could be the guy to step back into the United first 11.
That's the problem you've got. They all want to be first teamers now. Those age, that kind of age, they all want to be first teamers, and you're you're up against Varane and Maguire, and even if they have one or two bad games, those two, they're experienced enough to come back, and I don't think you replace those. But if he can reinvent himself as another position, who's to say he can't come back into the side?
Anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, good conversation, but I want to move on to what I predicted would be my favourite part of the show. We're bringing up, obviously, that Tevez picture. I don't know if you've seen it. I'll bring it up now anyway. And I know exactly who I'm going to talk about this as well. I'm passing it straight over to Callum. What
of all the websites to get it off, James, bloody hell.
Callum, what are you thinking about this?
It was after his visit to page 3, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it must have been. I can't believe you've gone to the Sun, James. Should be ashamed.
It was just the first one that came up.
Yeah, it's a disgrace. You coming to me first, are you? Is there a reason?
Yeah. Just, I like how angry you get at things, that's all.
Tevez can fuck off and die for all I care, to be honest. I don't care. Can't stand him. Horrible person. When you're putting up signs when you're playing for City saying "Rest in peace, Fergie," people can call me disrespectful in the comments all they want, but when a senior football player is doing that in the public eye, I don't think he deserves any respect from any of us, quite frankly. So he can fuck off, quite frankly. Again, I can't quite remember why he left now, to be honest. I think something happened with a fee that we didn't want to pay, or I can't remember now. It was so long ago, but you can't come out disrespecting that. So quite frankly, I don't think any Man United player should have, any Man United fan, should forgive him. We got the guy the Champions League, for Christ's sake. We won him his first Premier League title, and then he pisses off to City, and then has the disrespect to do that. No, not for me. I mean, go on, Mark.
Sorry. I do agree with you. You know what? I totally forgot about that image. And today, when I was looking at the poll, I really had to really sit there and think. And initially, I probably would have gone with Di Maria, but probably in hindsight, it wasn't really that bad. He came to United, it didn't work out for him. PSG came calling, and he went. People like to say that he's a snake. He probably said some awful things about United, some that we don't know about it, but in the grand scheme, probably not that bad. But I absolutely agree with you, Tevez. I do forget about everything that happened after. I think what happened was Glazers, United weren't prepared to pay 25 million at the time, and at that point it was quite a lot of money. And then he ended up sort of obviously talking to City and then going there. But yeah, all the sort of repercussions were disgusting. And you know what? I think this just goes to show with the media and showing a picture like that, and probably does really sort of hit the ice on the cake, really, where Tevez is probably the most disliked, because everyone knows, seeing him in the United shirt now, it's people off.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there's like exactly, someone just said it in the comments there, the Sun do anything for clicks. They've put that picture on their website because they knew it pissed us off. It meant we'd react, it meant everyone would look at their website. I mean, personally, he's not my most hated player. There's others I can't stand more, to be honest, but he was the kind of guy that you just ignore because he doesn't deserve your time of day, quite frankly. I'm sure you all agree, to be honest, because
Ashley Young got a retribution, didn't he, on Di Maria? Kicked him to shit, almost broke him in half when he kicked him into the stands. So did kick him to the advertising boards. That's more like it. You want a Roy Keane to walk on and headbutt him, but
the thing is with Di Maria, though, he had his house burgled, and then his form completely changed, and then his wife couldn't stand Manchester, and then he started slating Manchester, and then, do you know what? Like, just do one. Like, if you're going to be that, it's not being disrespectful to the club. It's being disrespectful to the people of Manchester and to the city of Manchester, and then it's disrespectful to the club. So, and if any, and then that's the biggest part of it. It's disrespecting all aspects of it, and when you don't respect the people, why the hell should they respect you? So they can both do one for me.
With the way Di Maria is kind of built, and the fee and everything about the deal, it was either going to go really well and he was going to score loads and loads of goals, or it was going to go horribly wrong. There was going to be no kind of middle ground with him, and I think you can't. To be fair to him a little bit, you're right. You can't really acclimatise when someone burgles your house. I mean, it's not the nicest welcome, is it, to living in Manchester? But I think Tevez went out of his way to do that, to put that sign up to hold it up in front of people, and oh my days, honestly, I don't like City, scummy, shitty club. Don't like them anyway. Pep's little sugar daddy is always throwing money. But that photo, as soon as you see that, your estimation of them as a club, the fact that they didn't usually come out and go, okay, it was an action of one player. It doesn't represent the whole of our club and our fan base, because they were employing him, which they should have done. They should have said it doesn't represent us as a club, but they didn't, because they're a scummy, shitty club. So,
yeah,
he's a prick.
Just to add to that, Henry, about 4 days ago, you had City fans chanting about Sancho, Rashford, and Saka. Sancho and Rashford, sorry, because it was about United. Yeah. These people that were at that game, Rashford probably fed their children. Man City didn't come out and condemn any of that. They didn't condemn that. They didn't condemn the Tevez thing. They ended up saying "Welcome to Manchester" to Tevez. It's a very, City try and pride themselves nowadays on this kind of thing, that they are now a big club. They're just not, and in my eyes, they just won't ever well be. With fans reacting like that and behaving like that. Look, every club's got the bad people, but when they act like that and it isn't condemned, it's very Millwall-esque. It's very small-minded. It's the best way to describe. They're trying to act like a scummy club, like a Millwall or a West Ham kind of fan base, or a Leeds fan base, like they did at Old Trafford the other day. It's disgraceful, really, and they don't care. And the problem is, when you've got that, it's almost like Boris Johnson not condemning the coming out and not condemning the booing of the knee. When you've got those at the top not condemning it, it then makes people below them think, well, it's okay to do.
They act like a younger child.
Stop.
They act like a younger child in a family, like that. Like there's some families that doesn't get enough attention, or and then they do something way out of the blue and arsehole-ish just to get some attention. Like, I think they're not doing it because they genuinely hate, Rashford and Sancho and whatever, but they're doing it for attention because they're a little club and they're kind of written off as a bit irrelevant, and they can't sell out their first home game in a year back at their own stadium, and they act like a small club, and that's what they are. They're a bunch of scumbags. They cry about everything, and they go and spend 100 million on a player that fell over more times than touched the ball in his first game for the club. So
that they also didn't need a Mayad, to be honest.
No, they didn't. You're right.
Just out of interest, sorry, James, you might ask a question. Go on. You'll probably ask it anyway.
No, go on.
I was going to say, out of interest, who is everybody's most hated former United player?
It's funny you say that. That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I must admit, I don't have an opinion on that. Once they've left, they've left. That's it for me.
Yeah, I kind of.
I don't really have an opinion on it, to be honest.
Right, hang on a minute. Why are we taking this moral high ground? Behave yourself. Who don't you like?
Because we've got good morals, Stu and I. No, on a serious note, I don't mean to take the moral high ground, but genuinely speaking, I wish everybody well after the club. And if they've done us a little bit dirty, I couldn't give a fuck. See you later.
Yeah, I just don't feel it's waste. It's. I don't want to waste my energy on that one, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely right.
I
think
agree,
I
totally agree. Like, I've got no interest in.
I don't have interest, but you can still not like them.
I'm not a big fan of Diva. I remember when Ashley Young sent him down the pitch, the little fun. That was funny, but I said before, I've got no interest in who Man United. It's like when we get transfer rumours. I've got no interest in who Man United might or might not, might sign or might not sign. When there's 11 players on that pitch, I'll support every one of them until they leave, and that's what I've always done. I've got no interest in running agendas against former players. It's just, as Stu said, I've got no interest in it. It's a waste of time. Just support who's here and say goodbye to who isn't. That's just what I've always been about. I've got Tevez, Di Maria, Falcao, we could go on for even Fellaini, who I'm not a big fan of him, but I think he got a bit too much disrespect. But I've got no real interest in players who didn't used to play for us. I just don't really care anymore.
Having an agenda is a little bit too far, but being pretty pissed off at something like the thing that Tevez did. Di Maria hasn't come out and completely disrespected United and said we're, a pile of crap that with a load of disrespectful knobheads. That he hasn't come out and said that. But with the Tevez thing, like he's bashing his mentor, really, the guy that made him. Like, respectfully, he was a bit crap before that. So,
quick question. Quick question. Why was he photographed wearing the shirt? Does anybody know what the reason behind?
I was actually going to tell you I was going to tell you at the end. So he posted it on his Instagram and said he's giving away this shirt once he reaches 1.7 million followers. So he's used the shirt as like a ploy to get more social media followers.
What a bastard!
I'm sure that hasn't worked. I'm sure why? How would that work when the fans that you're trying to give it away to hate you? Like, come on, man, come on.
People are suckers, mate.
People are dumb, aren't they? Yeah.
They're not all clued up like you and I, Henry.
But it's the I don't have an issue with him. He can do what he wants, but to do that for a guy that is such a massive figure in world football, to do that is one of the most disrespectful things you can do when it comes to as far as it goes after leaving the club. I think it was
probably City, Henry, that pushed that agenda. I would say. I mean, I don't know. I've got nothing to suggest it is, but it wouldn't surprise me at that time.
But is he that thick? Like, seriously, are they going to poke him and gone, hold this up, and he's going, yeah. So
if anything, Henry, he's probably very clever. Like, let's face it, he's not gonna auction off a City shirt because no one gives a shit about them. It's not gonna get everyone to follow him. The whole world knows Man United. So if anything, he's probably quite clever for doing it. It's a bad way of doing it, but it's a clever way of doing it.
Well, the RIP Fergie thing, I think that's just like in regards to, that's what I meant. I was talking about that. No. In regards to that is one of the worst things you can do, because he's City fans. They would have idolised. I mean, they were probably supporting United like 15 years ago anyway, but they probably idolised Fergie and looked up to him as such a. He was a father figure for football as a whole, and to do that, I mean, you get knobheads on Twitter that do it, but this is a pro footballer. Come on, this is a guy on the biggest stage, and he's doing that. Like,
yeah, but that's what the thing is, Henry. That's what a lot of celebrities. They're just thick people. They might have good qualities. It's like politicians. They're not actually. They don't have any common sense, and it's just the same. We've seen a lot of them. We've seen Wan-Bissaka's driving a car without insurance or something ridiculous. It's just pathetic.
You know what that is?
Stupid, honestly.
Charlie, that's because his fucking agent forgot to do it. Because there's no way he was going to do that in fucking himself. His agents forgot to do it. He's fucked him over. That's what's happened. Or his personal manager was forgot to do that.
It's Carlos Tevez though, not Gemma Collins. We're talking about someone who has like 400 advisors who all talk to him about what he's going to do the next day. How he's going to wipe his ass.
I tend to agree with that. But our club employs a group of people that go around and change the fucking plug socket on a player's house on a fucking TV or a whatever microwave because they can't be asked to do it themselves. That's the issue with professional footballers. They are. It's true. I'm sorry. It's true.
Yeah, he can do that.
But I don't disagree with you, Henry. I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying, in the big.
He's probably getting his ass wiped when he's just taking a dump. So, but seriously, but to do that, honestly, what a complete tosspot. Seriously.
I mean, Michael Owen's a knobhead, though, to be fair.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to throw Michael Owen into
I was going to say my dad calls him a traitor because, my dad's a Liverpool fan, so he's a traitor in his eyes.
Never known a player to be so hated by Man United and Liverpool fans. No. And then the delusion of the man who seems to think both sets of fans love him. When he's I don't mean to be horrible, but he's a moron. Why have you heard him?
Some of the things he
It's
says,
because,
honestly,
it's because he chats shit and he's delusional. He's terrible. And why wasn't that an option, James? To be honest, yeah?
I
That was one
completely
missed.
forgot about
I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I've not cued this or anything, and I didn't actually plan to say Michael Owen, but I've actually got some of his pundit quotes up on
Go on.
screen here.
Everyone get the popcorn
Go on,
ready.
give me a random number between 1 and 15.
8. My
8.
favourite number, 8.
Number 8. So this was one that he said. He said it during a tackle as a pundit. He's elbowed him in the head, but for me, there's nothing in it. Go on, give us another number.
Just a quickie on that one. Do you remember the USA 94 when Leonardo elbowed Tab Ramos and Keegan goes, "There's nothing wrong with that. Get up." And Tab Ramos's face was like literally caved in. Do you remember that?
Give me another number.
4.
2.
4. All right, we'll do 4 first. If there's a bit of rain about, it makes the surface wet. So he's just a moron. Just go on. We'll do number 2 now.
Surely that's not true.
It's a good run, but it's a poor run, if you know what I mean. No, I don't know what you mean, mate.
No, that's completely blown out of the water.
Whenever you think of him, you just think of, well done, he's 13. Like, you just think of him trying to abuse a little child, basically, in the Stokes ground. And it's like that sums up who he is as a person. And, I mean...
Michael Owen thought that winning goal in the 4-3 win against City was his saving grace. That's what Michael Owen thought.
He should be a consultant at Dignitas, because he'd send everyone to bloody sleep anyway. He's
But you know what, lads? You know what?
I'll be honest. That was one of my favourite ever games, watching that. And I remember how hysterical I was. So I will say thank you very much for that. But other than that, that's it.
It's probably the only highlight of his United career, scoring that goal. Probably.
Well, you're using the
his
career
hat-trick against Wolves,
loosely there.
Like, this is my favourite one. I mean, he's just a fucking clinical tosser, isn't he? Like, he's just a proper tithead. This one was describing one of the penalties in a Super Cup game between Liverpool and Chelsea a few years ago. That's a fantastic penalty, but he'll be gutted it went wide. Well, it wasn't fantastic then, was it? Like, it just wasn't a good penalty. He missed. How was that a fantastic penalty?
Oh dear, you're gonna feel sorry for somebody that dumb, haven't you?
I doubt Everton are going to get anything out of this game. Well, they were 4-0 up at the time, so Liverpool were 4-0 up at the time, so probably not, are they?
Do you know what? He's one of those people, and you get them everywhere, and this isn't a discredit to anybody, but they just don't think about what they're going to say before they say it, and then they have to flip-flop, turn it on his head, and now they look like even more of an arse. Do you know what I mean?
Well, how was he a pundit?
My out of context AFU thing, by the way, I said last night that there are some managers of certain teams, and if you think about it logically, that look at their first 6 to 12 games and look at where they can score points and where they're not likely to score points. That's what my out of context is. I'm being done for that. And Karthik's kind of giving me a bit of grief over it, saying I should learn to keep my mouth shut and not say things like that. But that's the beauty of what we do, isn't it? It's I'm not talking about Michael Owen because my left foot is more brighter than him. I'm not and my left foot's not the best. But anyway.
But seriously, who in BT in the recruiting department looked at a list of people and went, you know what? From what he's said in the past, he sounds like fun.
I wasn't available at the time. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's very true.
When I can't go in, they've got to fucking scrape the barrel, haven't they?
Also, I can't stand Steve McManaman on BT as well. I'm like,
oh my god, terrible! He's terrible. But listen, this isn't just BT. There's only
I like Jermaine Janice. I do.
You can shut up, Jim.
You triggered him there.
He is a colossal bell cheese, and he does my head in.
I couldn't resist it, Cal.
The thing is, though, lads, all you need to be is stupid to get. It's the same with talk sport, talk shite.
Oh,
If you go on TV, two of the best, people moan, and it's awful. The sexism in football. People moan about women on the TV, but two of the best pundits I've ever seen have been Alex Scott and Emma Hayes. They are phenomenal. And people moan about it. Doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. Coming from a man, the majority of men on the TV speak bollocks. It's just absolute bollocks.
They hire Ashley.
Do you remember in the Euros? We were watching Holland and then Jermaine Genius came out and went, do you know who they should bring on? They should bring on Donny van der Beek, the guy who wasn't even there.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, Donny.
But how can you employ people like Ashley Cole? I watched Rafa Varane's first interview and they're going, that's very good English. I bet you they were doing that with Ashley Cole. They were going, that's really good English. Well done you. Well done you. You can actually properly speak English even though you're fucking English. How is that guy a pundit? How does he can't even spell his own name.
I mean, you've got Jamie O'Hara, right? I think he's got an IQ of about 7. Jermaine Genius, he hasn't got a clue who's even playing for the team. Who else you got? You've got Graham Souness, who's just clearly a racist. You've got Danny Mills, who a week ago his beloved Ben White conceded 2 goals to Brentford, but apparently winning 4 Champions Leagues and 14 trophies altogether means you can't cut it in the Premier League. Of course, we might not know if he's going to cut it in the Premier League, but for Christ's sake, this garbage that they're on about. It's just, when you've got Emma Hayes on the Euros going, she was brilliant. She was explaining why Croatia conceded because the fullbacks were going up and then it left space in behind, blah 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 blah. And then you had Danny Mills go, "Oh God, he's so fit. Look at how much he runs about." What's
I'll tell you who was good as well.
I swear to God, that best not end up on that stupid Twitter account, that as well.
Yeah, I'll tell you who was good as well. Jurgen Klinsmann. I thought Klinsmann was absolutely top draw. But do you know who's one of my favourites? And it stood around. No, Owen Hargreaves. He's as good as it gets. He is. I quite like Hargreaves. He's as good as it gets. He's very good. He's not biased, so.
But you've got Carragher, who had fully had an orgasm in the middle of a Liverpool game when Firmino controlled the ball. And he goes, "Oh wow!" And it's like,
what's going on out of context? That is.
Yeah, I know.
You're Callum fucking Henry Blakenmacher.
Honestly, but how can you do that in the middle of commentary? Just like fully have a full-on orgasm in the middle of commentary. It's like and. Spit on people as well, but we'll gloss over that part.
Diggity grave here, mate.
Micah Richards. I know he's just there for vibes at times, but he's quite entertaining to watch.
He's an honest guy.
He's entertaining.
He's too happy. Nobody's that happy. Like no one smiles and laughs.
He must be on something, must he?
No, you know what? His football intelligence isn't particularly good, but I think sometimes it's about the relationship and dynamic with Keane. It's excellent. Keane's actually very good. I know he's a bit ruthless sometimes, but I think he's all right.
I like him.
Yeah. Well, Pogba should be getting 4 assists a game. So, I mean, end of conversation. End of conversation.
That's it.
I mean, Grealish, God, he got 4 assists in that game. We're watching that. I think, bloody hell, 100 million, 4 assists in that game. What phenomenal player, Jack Grealish.
Soon as being a clown.
He's just being a knob.
And also, lads,
out of interest.
Sorry, James, go on, mate.
No, it's all right. You go.
I was just going to say, you get on TV for who you are, not what you are. And, you get to the top in top institutions for who you are and who you know and et cetera, et cetera. It's former players now. If you're a former player, you just instantly get an invite onto Sky or BT, no matter whether you're good or not. And I don't think it's fair. I think there's probably thousands of people out there looking for an opportunity who probably know more than they do and understand the game, the fundamentals of the game better.
Well, it's fucking Sky TV. Didn't they roll out that Flex today? Is it today or fucking yesterday?
He's been on Sky for a few weeks, I think.
Yeah, Sky Sports News, isn't it? He's on.
They've changed it to a budget version of what they used to have, basically. They've
gone.
We can't have all these people, so let's just get randomers.
What's he doing on it?
Oh, he was actually there in the studio doing like a chat panel with the two hosts, and it was like give fans a voice, fair enough, but he was just sat there and thinking.
Do you know what, Henry? It's absolutely nothing to do with giving the fans a voice. It's giving the people that will get the best reaction or the most reaction.
It's for views. Of course it is.
I'm not being funny. If it was to do with proper fans' voice, it wouldn't be the United stand or wherever he is now getting on there.
No.
Like, in all seriousness, it'd be someone from this channel. It'd be someone from Stretford Paddock getting on there.
Exactly.
People from Manchester who, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but when you've got people like Mark Goldbridge who pretends that he's a Man United fan, he clearly isn't. But then you've got good fan channels that are completely overlooked. It's not right because they're not going to get the reaction, but they're completely overlooked. And then you get all these people who hate fan cams because of the people at the United stand or wherever. I'm not saying the United stand is completely terrible. It does have its good moments and it does have its good insights. But unfortunately, it's built a business and built a legacy off negativity and reactionary crap from straight after games.
It's true. It's very true.
All the channels can be very guilty of that, and don't get me wrong, but they fed off it a lot more than others, and unfortunately, it made them the most popular with the most subscribers, the most views, or whatever you want to say. And unfortunately, that has become a stereotype.
Here we don't.
But as people, I'm sure they're really nice guys. Like genuinely, I'm sure they are nice people.
I'm sure he is. Yeah, I'm sure he is. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. Not
that Joe bloke though. I've heard he's a bit of a tosser.
Oh, he's a fucking clown. He is an absolute fucking clown.
I mean, there's definitely many channels out there, and they'll remain nameless, but they tend to put stuff up that is clearly rubbish to get a reaction out of.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, but they get discredited by everybody straight away, which is good. It's good to see.
It's very good to see. Well, listen, we're very much over our hour mark, so I will bring the show to an end there. It was a good discussion. I enjoyed that. We went a little bit off topic, but when you're talking about how bad Michael Owen is, you can always find time for that. But with that being said, a massive thank you to you guys for joining me. It's been a brilliant show. You've been a brilliant panel. Somehow we've managed to get around everyone. Didn't think there'd be this many people on, but here we are. Massive thank you as well to everyone who tuned in, got involved in the comments as well. There's a lot of comments tonight. It was really great to read through them and get you involved. As always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm sure we'll have, I think we've got Mark's hosting a post-match review on Sunday, and then we'll have Uncut as well for you to stay tuned for. But yeah, like I said, be sure to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos, and we'll see you next time.